Hi guys, it's Jared OD here, and today I'm going to take you through what we call the context of positive handling. It's just a few moments of your time where I'm going to take you through some of the stories that we know have happened in incidents of use of force with children in schools and in educational settings around the country. So what might be surprising for you to hear immediately here is that actually, we have more problems with primary age children presenting with violence at our schools now than we do in the secondary schools. And that's evidenced by the number of exclusions that we have. There's far more exclusions in primary schools now than there are in secondary schools for violent behavior. And just one example of that is the story of Mackenzie Dunkley, who's 4.5 years old. I mean, so young, when he was permanently excluded from his school for a number of incidents that he'd had where he had lashed out at teachers. He kicked one teacher and was generally behaving in a way that the head teacher eventually found was unacceptable in terms of the risk, and had to go ahead and move towards a permanent exclusion for him. That was in spite of the fact that they had tried a behavior management plan with his parents, which didn't work out. So eventually they had to exclude him, and that's a story that's, in my experience, it's not that unusual. Actually, we have a lot of schools who are having trouble with their early years pupils. Here's a story about Colin Adams. Story is an interesting one because it demonstrates for me the breadth of attitudes that we can have when we're talking about use of force with children. Mr. Adams was attacked in a school classroom one day by a 12-year-old boy who punched and kicked him, knocked him to the floor, and then fell on top of him and put his hands around his throat to throttle him. And as he was doing that, there were actually other adults and teachers in the room with him. They hesitated. They didn't intervene to help him, except for one member of the teaching staff who was there, who did actually reach into the fight, grabbed hold of the child's finger and bent it such that the child yelped in pain and let go of the teacher he was attacking. And that's when everybody else jumped in and got the situation sorted out and made safe. But for me, this situation kind of demonstrates the range of attitudes. You've got people in that room who are hesitating because they don't really believe they can or should put their hands on the child. Then you've got this teacher in the middle, if you like, who reaches in and makes an intervention, probably despite his his hesitations to do so, but he knows he has to do something to help his colleague. He's got a duty of care, and he helps. Interestingly, when the police arrive later on to do to basically mop up and take the statements and so on of the people involved, they found that teacher was distraught. He thought that was it. There was going to be professional investigation, safeguarding issues, and everything. And they actually said to him that he shouldn't worry. That in a situation like that where somebody's being attacked on the floor, you could run over and kick the person to get them off the victim. So there you have it. You've got the whole range of different approaches to use of force there. And one of our issues when we do training is we try and make sure that everybody is singing from the same hymn sheet. As such, we try to baseline everybody's understanding of what's expected, what's not expected, what's a reasonable thing to do, and what's probably not a reasonable thing to do. So we just try and make sure that everybody's baselined at that. The next story I want to go through with you is Royden Cope. In 2012, Royden was in his school. He's a very experienced teacher at this point, about 40 years experience, and he was called to deal with a 7-year-old young man who was running amok in the school. He was hitting other pupils with his school bag and knocking them on the floor like Skittles. Deputy Head Royden Cope appeared at the scene, reached in, grabbed the child by the wrists, and led him off to his office with another teacher present. In the office, he let go of the child and decided he had to talk him down and de-escalate the situation. The child was running about and bashing and crashing into things, and at one point, Mr. Cope put his hand out to stop the child hitting his head off a desk. There was contact made between the child's head and the deputy head's hand, and to make a long story short, this resulted in a court case where Deputy Head Royden Cope appeared in front of the magistrates at Preston Magistrates Court on a charge of assaulting the child. Now, that was after 6 months on suspension and with the charge hanging over him. Now, in what was probably one of the quickest court cases of the day, the magistrates found that he had done nothing wrong. Most teachers have done something like that in their career, and it's nothing unusual, and it's certainly nothing that would constitute an assault. So he was found not guilty. The magistrates actually said that he was merely acting in accordance with Department for Education guidance, which is a really important point. And that was the result of the incident. As I understand it, he retired shortly after returning to school. So an interesting case, and one that has some really salient points for us, especially in terms of having robust policies and procedures in place, including the writing up of really clear incident reports after any incident such as what happened with that child. So that's a really important point. We have other stories though. Here's one about David Hutton, really a similar one to what happened with Royden Cope. He had to escort a 14-year-old boy away from a fire emergency exit that he was threatening to tamper with. And he reached into that incident, grabbed the child by the arm and led him off down the corridor to remove him from the audience that had formed and to be able to speak with him in private. Another teacher who was there saw the way he did that, didn't like it, and reported him to management. Management took it to the Board of Governors, and the eventual result was that he was sacked from his job. Now, he had a feeling that this wasn't right. He took that to a solicitor, they took it to an employment tribunal, and after 2 years, he actually won his court case for unlawful dismissal, because the tribunal judge said that there was some suggestion that he had done the wrong thing, and there's no evidence to support that. So he was merely using a reasonable amount of force to prevent, at that point, a crime from happening. So an interesting one, he was awarded compensation, a substantial amount of compensation, as you can see, but sometimes, again, we have to say that some really solid training and a good understanding of the concepts that we teach on our positive handling would probably have saved everybody in that situation the trouble that they went through. Now, unfortunately, we see a lot of injuries with teachers, and Judith Woe's story is one of those. She was working as a special needs teacher at the time, and a pupil that she was working with jumped on her back, grabbed her by the face, and started clawing at her. She ended up in a really bad way. She had post-traumatic stress from the incident and couldn't go back to work. She took a case. The London Borough of Newham, who was her employer at the time, was found to be negligent. So that means they must not have provided her with the information or instruction or training or supervision that she required to stay safe at work. And she was awarded a substantial amount of compensation there. Shire Lewis was another teacher. She's working with children with emotional behavioral difficulties. She had a 13-year-old boy jump on her back, grab her in a headlock. Unfortunately, they fell over, hit the floor. She hurt her neck really badly. And even though those injuries may heal somewhat, it's often the psychological scars from these incidents that unfortunately result in people not being able to return to work and having a lot more negative effects in their life, actually. That was a huge payout that she was awarded for that one. But again, you know, when we ask the teaching staff that we work with, would you prefer the money or would you prefer to have your mind and body intact? Most people choose the latter. These stories really are about risk management. You know, it's so important that we have these positive behavior support plans and good risk assessments in place at a school so that we're all trying to avoid these incidents from happening. So what can you expect when you come to a Dynamics Positive Handling course? We're going to make sure that these kinds of incidents are reduced to their absolute minimum for you in your career at your school, for the children you look after. And we do that by going through these major points here. We want you to make sure that you know your duty of care, where it starts, where it stops, and what it entails, what the duties placed upon you by law are in regard to that duty of care. It's both moral and ethical to have a duty of care, but there's also a legal aspect to it. We want you to understand the principles of reasonable force. So there are certain ways in which you can make a decision which are compatible with how the law views any use of force incident. And we want you to know that. We call it our decision-making framework, or the restraint rules. We'll talk a lot about behavior, we have quite an in-depth communication package that we mesh into the training as we're doing the physical skills. We'll also talk about how the brain changes during these incidents, the types of behaviors that you'll see and why they're expressed in the way they are, so that can all feed into your risk assessment process as well. You'll be working as a team, so whether we're doing verbal tactics or physical tactics with you, we'll be making sure that you're maximizing the use of the people around you in any given incident. We really want you to have good teamwork, and it's the best way to get through these incidents safely. After all of that, when an incident is safely dealt with and you're back in the staff room, you're going to have to pick up some paper and write an incident report. And we're going to help you with a framework for what to include in that incident form and how to write it. You know, the chances are, if you're a good person, you're going to make the right decisions about use of force. So it's so important that you're capable then of articulating that accurately and clearly after the event. So I hope that you know, a few of the ideas that I've discussed with you just now about the context of positive handling, about your personal safety, about the kinds of things you may face if an incident happens. I hope that's been really helpful to you. We have an awful lot of experience in delivering positive handling in schools, and so we're going to help you with that. There's some details on the page right here. If you want to go to our webpage, you'll find our email details there. There's a phone number there. Call our office and let them know what you're looking for. I'll get straight back to you as soon as I can about your requirements. I hope that was useful. I hope to see you soon. It'd be really good to meet you and your team and to help you with your positive handling. Thanks a lot.